Welcome, ACC football fans, to an all ACC edition of the DraftKings Nation film room. Collin, Sherwin alongside Seth, Varnadore. We're going to take a look at three different games on Saturday: Syracuse versus North Carolina, Duke versus Notre Dame, and Georgia Tech versus FSU. Some new coaches, some new coordinators. Obviously, it's 2020. Everything is all in flux and different. But Seth, let's start with the biggest spread on the board, which is Syracuse versus the upstart and adored by the betting public, University of North Carolina Tar Heels.
All right, so when you look at it here, you got Syracuse and North Carolina. Syracuse was a pretty bad team last year, as you can see by the coaching staff turnover here. You got a new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, two other new coaches on the defensive side of the ball, and you're 106 in returning production. So you're returning not a lot of production off a bad team. North Carolina, on the other hand, is 18th nationally in returning production, 9th on offense with 87% of returners. And when you look at kind of Bill Connolly's metrics here, when you're close to 90% or over 90% of returning production, that's usually like a 7-point bump in adjusted points per game. So this North Carolina offense should take a big step forward, and they were really good at the end of last year, beating a pretty good Temple defense into the ground in their bowl game. Then you look at the next thing we like to look at is the talent. So last year, Syracuse was 62nd in team talent. North Carolina is 28th. And to that, Syracuse added the 59th rated recruiting class, and North Carolina added the 19th. So it would seem that North Carolina has quite a big advantage in the talent department as well as the returning production.
So some stats as well for the gamblers out there. UNC was 8-5 against the line last year. They actually led the ACC in margin of victory over the spread. So they averaged over 7.7 points a cover across the season, including losses. Cuse was 4-8 against the spread last year, and they also bring in two new coordinators. Tony White, who is the former defensive backs coach at Arizona State, and Sterling Gilbert, who Seth and I got to watch a lot at our alma mater, South Florida. Let's just say we weren't very impressed. If you're looking for an offense that plows the ball into the line 40 to 50 times a game and then just tries to throw it up the sideline every once in a while, he's your guy. But he's had, I think, 8 jobs in the last 11 years, if that's correct. And there's kind of a reason for that. So we're not really sure why Syracuse ended up with him there. But we're not expecting a lot out of the Syracuse offense, especially with their top 2 running backs now in Abdul Adams and Jarvian Howard opting out of the season as of 2 days ago.
Yeah, that's another factor to consider with their returning production is you had their top 2 backs opt out. You had a starting linebacker opt out. I think you had a reserve defensive lineman opt out, and they may have had some injuries. So those returning production numbers are probably being a little generous to Syracuse. It could be even worse. Let's look at the film and see what we think, maybe how North Carolina will attack. We're not really going to talk too much about Syracuse because they have 2 new coordinators, so we're not exactly sure what they're going to do. But we have heard they want to run a 3-3-5 on defense. So 3-3-5 is typically attacking, blitzing, a lot of movement. So we're going to look at how North Carolina handled a little bit of blitz and movement against Clemson last year in their near upset. So here you see Clemson's going to bring some extra guys. The quarterback gets the ball out of his hands to a player in space, and he's able to make a nice run after the catch. Same thing here, play action fake to hold the safeties, and it's just a one-on-one win where North Carolina's receiver beat one of the Clemson defensive backs.
And these Syracuse defensive backs are not this good.
This is not Clemson.
An elite Clemson defense.
Yes. And so then you have some package play where I can throw a bubble up here. You may even have some type of RPO down here. But the back, they're pulling the backside guard. He cuts it back, makes a nice move in the open field there, and picks up a big gain. And here's just kind of if you don't bring blitz, what is – Sam Howell, great freshman year. What is he going to do if you don't bring blitz? Well, if you give him time, this is like his 3rd or 4th option here. He's looking this way the whole time. This looks to be some type of mesh play, maybe with the wheel by the back. So his eyes are here, and he ends up getting down to this crosser on the other side. So that's pretty good mental processing from a freshman. It would seem that he's only going to get better.
I think the resurgence of North Carolina under Mac Brown sort of caught a lot of college football people by surprise. But when you've got a quarterback like Hal and the ability to bring in talent, like you said, they're bringing in top 20 classes. They're really looking on the up and up here. It's 23.5. It's a big number. It's very possible. And the thing with Syracuse as well is, Sterling Gilbert offenses tend to finish in the top 3 in the country in pace because they do go so quickly. They don't go very fast, and they do go fast. They don't go very far. They're not very efficient, but they run a lot of plays. So the high speed, high tempo that you've seen under Dino Babers, under previous iterations, the pace will still be there. It's just the explosionness and the points won't be. So that's even more opportunity for North Carolina to score. I kind of like UNC to cover here. It's a big number. If it got over 26, 27, I might stay away, but I think at 23.5, there's still like a shade of value if I was to be on a side. But again, it's week 1. Teams could look out of sorts. That includes UNC. Caveat emptor here, but I kind of like UNC for the cover.
Yeah, I lean towards them as well. And if you're worried about the blitzing and all the pressure and all the different things you might get from a 3-5, one interesting thing about Phil Longo's offense, who's the offensive coordinator at North Carolina, is he lets his receivers make a lot of reads, and he doesn't put as much pressure on the quarterback. So the receivers are making the kind of, based on what the coverage is, they can kind of break at different spots, and their route may change based on coverage, and he puts a lot more pressure on them than he does the quarterback. So that's probably why you're able to see Howell come in as a freshman and play really well. And that'll also help combat pressure and different weird coverage looks you try to get thrown at you with a 3-3-5. So that's another plus.
I was going to say, more teams that run and shoot concepts. We're all for that.
Like, yeah, they're like
let's go.
They're like an amalgam of a bunch of different things, but yeah, they use that, which is an interesting wrinkle. So that's another point in their favor, I think.
So our next game on the board is going to be Duke Notre Dame. Duke, since 2013 in ACC games, and remember, this counts as an ACC game now, is 17-10-1 on the road against the line. I believe the number we have is 20.5 as we tape this. Let me double check. Yes, it's still 20.5. Total 54.5 in book returns, along with a lot of his teammates to Notre Dame this season.
Right. All right, so here's the returners. As Collin mentioned, Notre Dame returns quite a bit in certain spots. So overall, they're kind of low. They're 83rd nationally in overall production returning, but they return 59 starts on the offensive line, and they return 13 starts at quarterback, which we both think are pretty important early in the year. We saw that bear out in week 1 when we kind of went against our instinct there and picked against BYU, who had 13 starts and all their offensive line starts coming back. Duke has 49 starts returning the offensive line and a decent number of production returning on defense. They're 41st in the country with 73% of their production returning. Their big question mark for them is they have 0 quarterback starts returning, but they did get big transfer Chase Bryce from Clemson. He actually kept Clemson's playoff and national championship hopes alive a couple of seasons ago, coming in and playing really well as the backup. He finally left to try to get some playing time, and he decided to transfer to Duke. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Talent, Notre Dame's obviously ahead. 14th last year in team talent composite. 17th in rated recruiting class is going to be added to that. And you can see their per player average actually went up, even though it was only the 17th rated class. Duke had the 44th team talent composite last season, and they added the 61st ranked recruiting class to that. But you also factor in the Chase Bryce transfer, and that may bump that average up a little bit more. But Notre Dame definitely has a talent advantage. They both return the same amount of coaches, so there's not much there. But Notre Dame returns a starting quarterback that's won a lot of games, so that could be a factor.
And these are two coaches with systems, been in their school for a long time now. I think Cut's been at Duke since like 2006, somewhere in there. So system-wise, it shouldn't affect too much. And Brian Kelly's been at Notre Dame, I think, this entire decade. So
they played against each other last year. Notre Dame won 38-7. Kind of see where Notre Dame's edge was, where Duke had some success. Just kind of see if we feel like they can replicate that this year. So Notre Dame was able to win the one-on-one battles as you would imagine they would against Duke. Just throwing some go routes here. And then when Book got time to throw, he's able to make accurate throws, push the ball downfield for a touchdown here. So that's going to be key. Is he going to have time to throw? He had some big runs last year as well in this game. And then is Notre Dame's offensive line going to be able to kind of assert dominance? This is a pretty good wide zone look right here. Running back breaks the tackle, breaks it off for a long run. But Notre Dame's returning a lot of these guys on the offensive line. So you may see some more of this kind of power football from them. When you do bring pressure, that means it's going to be one-on-one outside, and Notre Dame's probably going to win those matchups. So that's the conundrum. Do you blitz book an experienced quarterback and they give him one-on-ones outside, or do you let him sit in the pocket a little longer and maybe pick you apart? What did Duke have success with? Well, they can scheme you up pretty well. Like you said, their head coach is well regarded in the coaching community for developing quarterbacks and having good scheme. So here's just a screen. So if Notre Dame wants to be aggressive on defense, they'll screen them, use some creative plays, get your guys in open space. And then they'll also take some shots too off play action. So I think I think Duke does a little RPO stuff. So here it looks kind of like almost like a power RPO where I'm kicking, I'm wrapping, and now he's up here so the quarterback can just, all right, I can take a shot outside if my guy wins. The safety is going to be held by the run fake. So there you go. You take a shot, your guy wins, you score a touchdown. So that Duke is going to have to be creative, I think, to stay in the game, but they're tough, and they're tough every year. They have a good coaching staff. They have smart players, right? Because it's not an easy place to get into. So I think that would be could lead to a tighter game than you may think, but Notre Dame does have a big talent advantage.
So at 20 and a half, I certainly like, this is one of those where you like it a lot more at 21 and a half than you do at 20 and a half, I think. This is a tough spot for Duke because you are bringing in a quarterback, fresh, a lot of expectations, but probably not a lot of practice time. A lot of these schools haven't been hitting, and with there aren't a lot of full camps that have happened. So because of that, it can be a little bit more challenging, especially first time out. But again, Coach Cutcliffe, I mean, this is the guy that, Peyton Manning swears by and is one of the great quarterback developers in football. I'm going to stay away from this game, I think. I just don't see a ton of edge. If it got on the other side of 21, I might be inclined to take Duke because the other thing Duke does is they do tend to play hard for 60 minutes. They'll play their starters a little bit more than most teams down the stretch, so the back door will be wide open. Inbook's a good quarterback. They have talent. There's a significant talent advantage, but this is one I'm just probably going to stay away from. And that moves us on to our last one, which is Georgia Tech versus Florida State. Florida State's first game under Mike Norvell, who comes in from Memphis after winning Memphis the conference championship in 2019. Certainly an interesting offseason for the Seminoles. But Jeff Collin seems to be building a program at Georgia Tech as they transition out of the triple option under Paul Johnson into something a little bit more conventional. Right now it is Florida State at home, minus 13. They will have 25% capacity in the stands. They will have tailgating. Over under is 52 right now as well. Norvell offenses tend to score a lot. They tend to go with a little bit more pace than maybe we've seen out of Florida State as of late. So there might be a total play here, but what do you see so far in what's returning to Georgia Tech and FSU?
So when you look at this game on the returning standpoint, both teams are actually returning quite a bit, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So Florida State's 27th in returning production. Georgia Tech is second in the country in returning production. On defense, Georgia Tech is also second, returning 94% of production from last year. And they have 100% the same staff as last season. Jeff Collins is known for being a really good defensive coach. They did some creative stuff last year we're going to take a look at. Florida State also has some studs on defense, and they're returning 83% of production, which is good for ninth in the country. They returned the defensive line coach and the receivers coach, but everybody else is new. So they're only returning 18% of their coaches from last season. So they're going to have two new systems put in that hasn't been kind to people thus far. So I would expect both defenses, as you can see, both returning 10 starters from last season. Florida State has more talent. Last year they were the sixth in the team talent composite, sixth in the country. Georgia Tech was 45th. They both recruited pretty similarly. let's look first at – so we're going to watch Memphis's defense from last year. Norvell came from Memphis. He brought his defensive coordinator with him. One thing they like to do was they'll move guys on the defensive line around. So we get a little bit of like a slant here, and then he's going to wrap around. And Florida State always has some studs along the defensive line. This year is no different. So then adding movement and different things like that should provide some interesting advantages for them. They're not afraid to be aggressive, so they're going to bring the corner from the boundary here. Now, your players aren't quite as good as you'll have at Florida State, but they will be aggressive. You can crease it, but I don't think Georgia Tech's got the guys to do that. Here's another one where you're going to see a 7-man pressure. So this is going to be straight man coverage. You kind of get a fluky bounce here. The ref calls it incomplete, but you see they're not afraid to bring pressure. And when I think of Florida State, I'm thinking of getting to the quarterback, hitting the quarterback, sometimes late, and then consistently playing man coverage and pressure. So I think that fits in with the personnel they have. Georgia Tech, this is them against Clemson last year. They gave Trevor Lawrence in the first game of the year a lot of trouble. So here's early. You can see their corner. He's back, driving on the ball, knocking away from a very good receiver, T. Higgins, who was a second-round pick last year. Then they did some stuff to confuse Lawrence. So Clemson's going to run like a double out here, just a quick game concept. He'll turn like he's going to run with it and then jump the second out here. It confuses Lawrence a little bit, or he undercuts it. A bad throw. And he picks it off. But they have some talent on defense. And here's another one later in the half. They're showing pressure here. He's going to back out. He's going to come. And I think he might wheel out. And you get another hand on the ball here by Georgia Tech defensive back. And this is all the first game. They showed a lot of stuff to Trevor Lawrence. He threw 2 interceptions in the first half. Had people asking if he was going to have a sophomore slump. He didn't, but they at least made him ask the questions.
And that'll be interesting going this week. With that week 1, without a lot of practice time, can Georgia Tech continue to confuse? Because you see your own defense every day. When you see 11 bodies you've never seen before on the other side of the line of scrimmage, it can be tough on week 1. So you're leaning under here.
I think both defenses are going to play really well.
I am going to keep taking a look here. I'm just not sure which way to feel about this yet. This is one of those where I want to see a half. I think I'm definitely betting the second half of this game no matter what, but I'm going to watch 30 minutes, see what plays out, and see what the line looks like. I think whatever you see in the first half will probably continue into the second half.
I think both offenses are going to be down from where Georgia Tech's offense was bad. They'll probably be a little bit better, but they're still very bad last year. I think Florida State, they'll probably take some time too. So that's what I factored that, and then all the returners on defense for both teams into thinking an under might be a good play here.
This is one of those where I think you're just going to be able to watch the first 30 minutes and definitely make some money on the second 30 minutes as long as you're paying attention. We are going to get out of here. See y'all this Saturday. This is going to be a lot of fun. We look forward to doing this all season long. 2 weeks till the SEC plays. That's going to be chaos and insanity. But we'll be ready for it as it gets going here. For Seth Varnadore, I'm Collin Sherwin. Thanks for watching.